This is not a car, it is Clement. Why have I got a DS when I have an SM that I've already moaned about and said, oh, it's too complicated, or I'm too scared to work on it, and it needs an absolute metric ton of work on it? Why would I then do this? This is a kind of, I mean, I don't want to keep dragging his name through the mud, but this is a bit of a hub nut move, isn't it? This is the sort of thing people would expect there. Well, yes and no. There's logic to this. I know this looks mad, and in many ways it is, but there are many reasons why I've taken this car on. The first one is that it hasn't actually cost me any money. I mean, it will. It will cost me a lot of money, but at the moment it hasn't. It's too long and complicated to go into now, but the long and short of it is it's effectively been donated. Under the skin, the SM and the DS are quite similar. I mean, they aren't, and they aren't. In many ways they're not similar, but in many ways they are, including the suspension, which, oh god, works on this car. So this car, as you've seen by the fact it's pumped up, runs, and that's one advantage the SM doesn't have. Basically, I've taken this as a view to learn how to walk before I learn how to run. By learning my way around a running DS and using it and enjoying it, and also ticking it off my list of many things I want to do, I will learn how all these mechanics work, because the SM, sorry, is so alien. Well, it is a hydropneumatic Citroen, but it's so alien to the ones I'm used to that it might as well be a different car. So this will help me learn my way around. Do you want to hear it start? Of course you do. Oh, no. I didn't even have to turn it off. It did it itself. No matter. It doesn't have an exhaust. I mean, from what I can see, there's no exhaust at the back. I need to get it on the ramp to have a proper look, but I think it comes to about here, and then there's nothing. Yeah, basically this is a working car, and through having this car and learning my way around it, I can learn how an SM works. I've got a head start, because the SM is a big job. The SM is a massive project, and this, although this looks a big project, it isn't as big as it looks. You are now calling me mental. You are saying, what on earth are you talking about? How is that not a big project? It is a big project, yes, it is. It's a very big car, so of course it's a big project, but there is a key difference between the DS and the SM, not just the engine. There is a similarity with the front wings, in that when you open the bonnet, like so, and you put the bonnet stay into the radiator, because why wouldn't you? The wing on the car is like the entire front corner. If you take the wing off, you end up with just a kind of a long run, a chassis rail either side, and that is the same as an SM. The engine is obviously not the same as an SM. The gearbox on this one isn't the same as my SM, because my SM is an automatic, but otherwise the gearbox would be quite similar, if not exactly the same. But there are many things in here that are similar to an SM. The difference is that from here backwards, the logic of that front end there continues. The doors, a couple of bolts, they're off. The rear wings, one bolt and they're off. The boot lid, I mean, if you lean on the boot lid at the moment, it will come off. The roof is fiberglass and bolted and sealed on. Basically, you can take all the panels off this thing and it's just a frame. You can get to everything. You can get to anything that needs welding, and it does. You can get to it. So that is a massive, massive head start. The SM, you can't do that, because apart from the front wings, everything else is kind of normal. It's just one big monocoque shell with lots of curves and swage lines and contours and difficult to make parts. So what I'm thinking is learn my way around this car first and enjoy it, because it's a DS. And then while I'm doing that, I can be working on the SM, and I will be familiar with how some of the stuff works, because things like the height correctors, the height control levers, the front suspension is actually the same as a DS on the SM, it's just round the other way. There are many, many, many similarities. And straight away, looking under the bonnet of this car makes looking under the bonnet of the SM look less daunting. I think this is a good move. It will probably not surprise you to learn that technically Clement isn't a road legal car. I mean, it's actually MOT exempt, so in many ways, well, Clement drove here. In some ways you could use it on the road as it is, but you have a responsibility to make sure your car is roadworthy, and that isn't. It's got 5 new tyres, including the spare, which is in the boot where it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be under the bonnet because DS. I appreciate the body looks terrible, but what's underneath it isn't actually that bad. I can't really show much of it at the moment because it's dressed, but there's some holes around the frame where the roof is, so that's going to be, I would say, difficult. It's going to be difficult to make the shapes and everything, but the access is fantastic, so it's not going to be horrible to do. I think apparently there's some bits that need doing along the sills. The doors are just shot. I mean, maybe the bottom half of the doors can be repaired, but I think it's just going to be a case of getting some new doors. The interior is shabby. I'll show you that in a sec. The bonnet is actually not too bad. Everyone's thinking, oh, but what colour are you going to paint it? I kind of like it like that. I want to slam that and let one of the tyres down and cover it in dust and make it look like it's parked on the side of a street in Paris, but have it mint underneath. So have the engine bay like pristine, everything's inked and painted and glossy and shiny and smooth and exactly where it's supposed to be, and the interior to be mint and comfy and quiet. Have the doors clunk, have the underside of it mint, well, not mint, it won't be mint, but it'll be fully protected and painted and everything like that, but keep it looking like that, because I love the way that looks. I just think that looks fantastic. You're probably wondering, what colour is Clement supposed to be? Actually, that colour there, Clement was Delta Blue, but at some point has been painted with, it looks like a very early form of hammerite, which is actually quite a cool colour in itself. This kind of like grey textured paint. But yeah, originally Delta Blue, so that's the original bonnet. I'll show you around. 1975 D Super. This is called a D Super 5, sorry. Now the D Super range replaced the ID range. I'm learning about DSs as I go, so people who know about DSs will correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But there is the badge on the back, which says that Clement is a DS23 injection electronique, which he is not. I don't know if that's the original tailgate, boot lid, whatever, or if someone's just fitted a badge on there, because I saw that badge when it turned up and I went, oh! But no, it's a D Super 5, which means it's actually got a 5-speed gearbox. So I've gone from having an SM, which is short of a gear, to having a DS that has an extra gear, so that's good. But yeah, the ID model was launched not long after the DS. I believe the ID came out in 57. Now they look very much the same. Don't forget, DSs didn't look like this to start with. They had a single headlamp at the front. This is the Robert Opron restyle, the guy who designed the SM. He is a legend. He was a legend. Well, no, he still is. He remains a legend. And he designed this front end. This came out in 67, 68. But yeah, the DS came out 55. I think the ID came out 57. The reason for the ID was that the DS, when it came out, was a hell of a lot more expensive than the traction Avant it replaced. Massively so. To the point that although people wanted it, they couldn't afford it. So Citroen said, well, why don't we take some of the funky stuff off of it and make a simpler version, and we'll call that an ID, which actually means idea. And they will be able to buy that instead. I mean, it still wasn't hugely cheap compared to the traction Avant, but it was cheaper. Now, the ID ran until 67, 68, something like that, and it was replaced by the D Super and the D Special. The D Special was actually the lowest spec, and then the D Super came out after, and that had slightly better spec, and it had a 5-speed option. And then in 1972, I think, they made the 5-speed option standard fit and called it the DS Super 5. I mean, the ID and the DS, when they first came out, there was quite a big difference, because the ID had manual gear change, and it had conventional powered brakes. It didn't have, this is a myth, it didn't have a master cylinder. It didn't have normal hydraulic brakes like a normal car. It still had powered brakes. The difference was how it was done. In fact, the ID actually had brakes more similar to a BX or a Xantia. It was all to do with how the weight of the car affected the braking power. The DS had a much more sophisticated setup. The ID didn't have the button, the mushroom-shaped button on the floor. It had a pedal, but it still had a valve, and it still had, you know, the fully powered system. The D Super, I believe, is one that started using the DS brakes. So this has DS brakes. This has the button on the floor, the full shooting match. The ID had the lower spec brakes, which were still pretty bloody good actually for the time, and it had a manual gearbox. The regular DS had the semi-automatic gearbox, and there was an easy way to tell that. The door is a bit. There we go. So Clement is tired. There's the mushroom-shaped button in the middle. Oh, Clement is comfy. So basically, in Clement, you find this lever here. Now this is what a normal ID would have had, or D Super. You've got a floor hinge throttle, a button, and a top hinged clutch. Heel and toe, and this thing will be fun. It's not made for heel and toe. So yeah, Clement has this manual transmission, which is a column shift. And I said in a video the other day that I'd love to have a car with a column shift. And that was actually a trick, because I knew that I was getting a car with a column shift. So there's the gear pattern. You bring it towards you like that, and then up is first. That's loose, ignore that, and that's my phone. Down for second, into the middle, let it return to the center, up for third, down for fourth, across fifth, and then push it all the way back, and that's reverse. That is a standard manual DS gearbox, but other DS, or sorry, that's an ID gearbox or D Super. Proper DS's have a little opening here, and they have a lever that goes across the top, and basically it kind of goes through a, I don't know, 3 sides of a rectangle. You've got a starter position, you've got a neutral, and you've got 4 gears, and basically you take your foot off the throttle, move the lever, put your foot back on the throttle. There's no clutch. It's a massively complicated system, and although it is still a manual gearbox, the gearbox itself those cars have is a manual gearbox. It's just how it's operated, how the clutch is operated, that differs. None of that complication in Clement. Clement is a 5-speed manual, the only DS to have a 5-speed gearbox, which I actually quite like. I mean, it's still quite funky to change gear like that. And where I've got the brakes, and I've got the power steering. Not only have I still got the power steering, oh, it's just gone. It keeps pressure in the steering. You can still turn the steering off, like, you know, a few minutes after switching the engine off. But yeah, other than that, this car is thoroughly DS. So being thoroughly DS, it has the headlamps that turn with the steering. Only these ones don't. They turn of their own accord. Clement is a little cross-eyed at the moment. The linkages and everything are missing, so that's one of the things to sort out. Some of the very basic models, I think the D Special didn't have directional headlights. They were fixed, so it still had that front end, but they were fixed. There's quite a lot of differences in DS specs, but they all look to the untrained eye the same. It's kind of the same sort of deal as Lotus 7 replicas or Caterham replicas. You know, to the untrained eye, they all look the same, but if you know what you're looking at, there's a lot of differences. You have pillarless doors, just like a C6. They copied the C6. Yeah, I know. The whatever model this is, Super, has these. I think some other models do have them, but if you have something like a Palace, which is more posh, these are different. You have different trim and everything like that. I love this cloth trim. It's got this kind of like French cloth, and then these bits here are padded, so the seats are ridiculously comfy. Oh. I did just sit in here once and have a beer at the end of the day. As you can see, a lot of leg room, because if I bring my legs all the way back, I have space for more legs. And that seat is not pushed forward. That's the normal position. It looks like it's pushed forward, but remember, you sink into it about 5 miles. You will have noticed there's a big fire extinguisher there. and there's another one in the boot, and there was a big vat of water under the bonnet called fire water, because Clement has gone on fire a few times. So that's one of the things I would like to stop from happening. Clement has also been stolen and recovered, I think in January. Clement has lived a life. Clement has stories to tell. Clement has dark stories to tell. I don't know most of them. But yeah, so this roof needs to come off, which is fiberglass. There is something up there. I hope that's not a bug. No, it's wiring. Yeah, you can see there's like scum and crud up there where someone's like tried hiding rusty stuff. But I'm not worried about that. I can sort that. I'm fairly confident of that. This is the main structure here. This is the main kind of, it's like a big 3D chassis. You have an armrest. I mean, honestly, this is ridiculously comfy. I need a light. I'm missing a light there. I'm supposed to have one of those. I've got the last DS steering wheel as well. The black plastic one, the early, even a 1971 model, something would have had the earlier type with the swooshy inner bit, which is a shame, but this is what it is. Now I need to look under Clement, and we will do that in time. Moving around back, we have a tow bar, which I'm pretty sure is not in the centre of the car. We have a boot lid that is not latching because there's nothing left. And a... oh! An emergency moustache. So yes. Okay. Yeah, Clement, everybody. This is Clement. Announcing Clement. Welcome, Clement. I am truly excited. Yeah, I was very apprehensive at first, but the more time I've spent around this thing, the more I have absolutely fallen in love with it. It's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So, plenty of work to be done, including we have an ignition key here, but we don't start the car with that because there is a button screwed to a piece of wood. That's how you start Clement. There's a choke here, and that's about it. All the other switches have gone for reasons. The speedo doesn't work, although apparently it was. The rev counter doesn't work. I don't think many of these work. Oh, that one does. Oh, and that one. The wipers work. And there is overlap, so Ian will be happy. Although they're looking a little bit staggered, and yeah. Indicators, they work. That's good. And I believe, so don't worry about it, Clement. It's obviously too much work for you. And I believe there is a horn somewhere. Oh! Wow, that's a big one. Heater controls there. I don't know how all that works. No clues looking at it. Glove box lid, but no glove box behind it. Excellent. So I need a glove box. I need many things. I'm pretty sure this mirror is supposed to be down here. And this like little recess. I mean, possibly not, because it does look kind of... help if I look at it, doesn't it? It does look quite OEM there. There was an additional door mirror here. Hello. Which was of a fashion. Oh, it's full of water. Okay. In a fashion that was screwed to the top of the dashboard, but I realised that this is being all jokey and everything like that, and being all silly, giving it a name. The name came from my eldest child, who I said I need to give it a name because it's got so much character. It needs a name. It needs to be a French name. We think, ooh, Michel, or I don't know. I can't think of a French. Jean-Pierre or something like that. And he went Clement, not Clement, as it would be, just Clement, because it's right-hand drive, so it's an English one. So Clement. This is Clement. This is not a car. It is Clement. Should we quickly take it for a little bimble? It's a private estate. Let's take it for a little bimble. Driving a Clement is a special thing. Because this is a smooth thing. He is a smooth boy. Yeah! Purrs along. And you can just drive off curbs. So like, here's a curb. Yeah, you just drive off the end. You don't really feel it. You can go through the biggest bumps you can find, like this crater. It didn't even flinch. Clement is cool. Clement has a noisy release bearing on the clutch. That is something I need to sort out. Go for reverse without grinding it. There we go. Clement is not fast. But yeah. Clement is cool and fun and smooth. Clement is very smooth. You could just drive like this. Just oh no, there is a speed bump. Oh, I saw one. So you pull up, you knock ignition off, parking brake down here. And that is Clement. Oh, God. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I actually own an SM as well. And the SM is a DS on steroids. But one thing you can't take away from the DS, even with an SM, is the DS-ness. Is it one of the best looking cars ever made? It probably is. So enough biffing around. What's the actual plan of attack? Am I going to keep mucking around with this thing? No. No, as I've said, everything I've said about the engine bay, the chassis, the body, blah, 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 is all true. I want to keep this thing kind of looking like it does, but making it mechanically spot on, getting the engine bay sorted, making it so I can use it. There are two reasons for that. Firstly is that I love the way this looks. I mean, you can't fake this sort of stuff. You can't fake that. And every panel has a story to tell, but unfortunately, I think these doors are probably... okay. Yeah, they're probably a bit past it. Would anyone like to win a piece of Clement? I'll come up with a competition. Yeah, okay, the doors probably need changing. But then I don't have to worry about painting them and making them look all pretty and stuff. They can just be whatever they are when they go on. Yeah, plan is to get it all sorted, get it sound, get it mint in every way except the way it looks. The reason I like the way it looks is because I won't care about it. It can be dinged, it can be biffed, it can be knocked into, and I won't be fretting about it because I won't be able to keep this thing here all the time. It will be on the road. And I will use it, and I won't be afraid of using it like that. So I love the way it looks like that. I genuinely do. I'm not just saying that for effect. I think that looks amazing. Maybe not the hole in the door, but and the boot needs changing. But yeah, I think that looks really cool. And in fact, I can make it look cooler. Let me. You may not agree at the moment. If I push this lever, yes, that's better. So I'm going to keep it looking like this. Now, because of the method of construction, because of the way this thing's built, if it came to it in the future that I did actually think, you know what, I'm going to restore it, I'm going to do the bodywork as well, you can just unbolt the panels and send them off and have them painted. You don't have to send the car away, because the shell is black anyway. So you can just, yeah, send the shell away, send the panels away, and then refit them all minty and fresh to your finished car. But I don't want to do that. I think that looks wicked like that. People will look and go, how's that roadworthy? And then I'll open my engine bay and it'll be like concours. It won't, because I'll be using it, but it'll be tidy. And because it's punk. This is a kind of an up yours to the establishment, isn't it? The establishment says you've got to restore it, make it all shiny. That's the conventional norm. No, it's not. Look at it. It looks awesome like that. It's got a story to tell. I think it's been dragged out of a field. I genuinely do. But that said, it has to work. It has to be functional. It has to be safe. It has to be sturdy. And that wing is beat to death. The under tray at the front doesn't look clever. That wing, the indicator here is held in with a wire. That won't do. And this trim here is hanging out. That won't do. I want all the bright work, all the stainless, because that's not chrome, it's all stainless. I want all the stainless to be mint. I want to try and make, you know, I love the number plates. I wouldn't normally do that because the year of it shouldn't have black and silver plates on it, but it works. So I'm going to leave them. Yeah, I'll do the interior. The interior will get some seat covers for it. Carpets, I don't know if the carpets are... Well, that's got a Porsche kick plate and some foil tape. Yeah, see, I don't want that. I'll be I might keep the Porsche kick plate somewhere for part of the story, but yeah, I want proper trim and everything. So carpets, seats, everything like that will be... Oh, it's fallen off. Will be spot on. They will all be as good as they can be. So under the bonnet here, we find a 2.2 litre 4-cylinder engine, which is often referred to as a 21. Not entirely sure why. Whistle stop tour time, because the battery doesn't have long enough for me to go into massive detail, and this video is probably already 5 hours long. There are some bits missing, but let's just go for the basics. Same layout as an SM, so you've got the engine there and the gearbox in front of it. The radiator sits on top of the gearbox. Why wouldn't it? So the engine, as you can see, is... Where does it start? There. That's the engine. Behind the axle line. Therefore, this is a front mid-engined layout. Good for weight distribution. The engine bay is not entirely complete. There are bits missing. There are lots of DIY bits. There should be linkages across here. That's a radiator. There's supposed to be some cowling and everything, so that has a kind of cowling that goes down here, directs the air in from the front directly into the radiator. And then the spare wheel, there's like a curved section here. The spare wheel would normally sit in there. That's in the boot at the moment. I mean, to be honest, that's a better place for it because it gives the tyre on it a much easier time. But it's supposed to be in the front. It has a fan and a fan belt driven by twin belts. So it's old school. It has a fan belt. Clement has a electronic ignition fitted and a tiny, teeny, tiny little alternator there, which is cute. The engine in this car is it's basic, yes, but quite old as well. And I actually love that about it. A lot of people are like, oh, the engine's the weak point of the DS. No, not for me. That's the oldest type of engine I've ever owned. That engine has its roots in the 30s. And that makes me very excited. As I say, it's 2.2 litre, technically, because it's 2,175cc. 4-cylinder overhead valve. It's a pushrod engine. First Citroen pushrod engine I've ever owned. So the camshaft is down in block somewhere, and there are pushrods that come up to the top and operate valves via rockers and stuff. Not a revvy engine in the slightest. Not exactly a high performer either. I don't know what the power output of this thing is. It only has a single carburettor there, and it's a single choke. It's just one big flap, I think. Oh, hang on, no, it might not be the top. Oh, it might be twin choke. It is twin choke. Clement, you sporty little number. So I don't know what the power figures are. I think about 100 horsepower. In fact, I think this is actually very, very similar to the engine that was in the CX I did the POV drive on. I think that was a 2.2. I think it was actually. And that was around 110 horsepower, I think. And this is probably around, well, it would have been, I don't know what it is now, around that kind of figure as well. So it doesn't really matter. It's kind of, you know, it's enough to make the car move. As I say, 5-speed gearbox in this one, so it sits in front of the engine. This is gear linkage here from the column shifter, and that is a knackered bush. The steering rack is also above the gearbox and is green. The steering column has this cam on it, which is similar to what the Duravi cars have, and a little wheel and bearing, and it's kind of like that lobe there is heart shaped, so there's a divot in the middle, which this tries to sit inside to centre the steering, because the car has centre point steering geometry, as in everything on it is neutral. Everything is zero, completely zero, which means it rolls as freely as a car can roll, which is good for economy and cruising and efficiency, but bad for steering feel and bad for self-centering. Well, that's what that's for. That is to try and make the car centre itself, the steering centre itself rather. So it will, I mean, it might work now if I try it. Yep, it's still got power steering power. Nearly. So that's what's making it spring back. It's not Duravi, because Duravi takes that system and goes mad with it and actually powers it back to the centre to counter the effects of torque steer. It's just an engine, but I intend to fully make that pretty, and I love the way these sound. Not this one so much at the moment, but generally. I mean, I love how the sphere there is right next to the exhaust manifold. That's brilliant. But brakes inboard here, big calipers. I think the SM has vented discs, and it has discs on the back. This has got solid discs on the front, excuse me, and a bit of windy pops, and drums on the back, big drums. And that's how these cars have this kind of funky interior, because the bulkhead, like the SM, just goes straight down to the floor, which means there's no transmission tunnel. It's just a wall. I mean, the engine's kind of behind that bulk there. The engine is like right in with you. LHM reservoir there, which has the fluid sucked out of it by the pump. This hose going to it, which is, I believe, looking at it, not correct, and it is indeed car heater hose, which explains the fact it's gone soft, so that needs changing as well. And there's a fair few sort of DIY bits and bobs here. I mean, that's kind of, someone's tried to do something fairly neat there, but at the same time that looks a bit, when there's no fuses in. Oh no, there are further along. So someone's done their own wiring. I don't even know what that's for. Got a lot of figuring out to do. I don't even, oh, that's the wiper motor. So it suggests that that's got, yeah, I don't know, I've got some figuring out to do. I don't even know what that is. It looks like a washer pump. Transbarmatic. There's the paint code. That is the Delta Blue paint code. But yeah, we can look at this another time. I'm going to do another video underneath it, checking out what it's like underneath, because I don't actually know, and it might be quite bad. But yeah, I hope that that was a pleasant surprise. That is Clement. So there will be more adventures. The work on this car will start, well, it will start before the SM, and the reason for that is quite simply, this is what I'm learning on. I'm learning my way around these mechanicals, things like suspension bearings, because there's no bushes, bearings, the way that it's set up, the way the brakes function, the button on these cars. I'm going to do when I learn how they work properly, I'm going to do a a piece on how Citroen brakes work, and then a second piece on how these brakes work, because these are different. So yeah, there we go. That's it. I hope that has come as a pleasant surprise. Well, not really planned, it's just the way it's turned out. And life is better when there's a DS in it. No, life is better when there's a Clement in it. So thank you for watching. Thank you to all the people who like the videos and subscribe, the subscribers especially. And most importantly, channel members, because channel members are legends. And they actually help me. Well, the fact that I've managed to put more videos out recently, some of that is down to the fact that the channel members are there. But yeah, they have effectively got a little bit of Clement in them. And I'm thinking of some way to honour channel members with Clement. I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to come up with something. In fact, thank you to people who leave knobhead comments as well, because it's all good for the algorithm. So if you write something shit-headed in my comments feed, you probably help me earn some money. Well done, you. So yeah, there we go. It's Clement.